CBS Evening News this Wednesday from the Florida Panhandle. Michael makes landfall and history. The most powerful hurricane ever to hit this region knocks out power and causes widespread damage. We have a team of correspondents, producers, and photojournalists spread across the hurricane zone to bring you extensive coverage, beginning with the headlines in 60 seconds.
Hurricane Michael is a hurricane of the worst kind.
A Category 4 landfall in the month of October.
One of the strongest storms ever to hit America, and the strongest storm to hit this coast since the 1850s.
This started out very innocently a week ago. They grew into a monster.
This hurricane has just defied all expectations and continued to pick up steam.
This is the coming storm surge. They're expecting possibly up to 12 feet of this.
Landfall was made near Mexico Beach, Florida.
Maximum sustained winds, 155 miles per hour.
Just 2 miles per hour away from a Category 5.
Is this going to produce catastrophic damage?
Unfortunately, I don't think enough people have left.
I am scared to death the people that chose not to evacuate. This is a horrible, horrible storm.
The winds are incredibly strong.
Whoa! This is a bad hurricane.
We're going to have to call it quits. We're going to get to a safe location.
I felt uncomfortable with the storm, and we got out of there because this is what I was worried about.
Good evening, I'm Jeff Glor in Panama City Beach, Florida, and this region just endured one of the worst hurricanes in American history. The worst hurricane to ever hit the Florida Panhandle, the worst hurricane to ever hit the United States in the month of October on record. Tonight, the rain is basically gone in this region, but the wind is still here with us. You can see power lines down behind us, power poles down just across the street here. There is the side ripped off a building. That is a scene we are seeing all across this region tonight. Some of the worst damage this evening is in Mexico Beach. That is where Hurricane Michael made landfall around midday. Here's what it looked like in Panama City Beach when Michael made landfall. Again, that was a look at Hurricane Michael as it made landfall in our area, a hurricane which has now turned deadly. Here's a larger look at the day. The sound unmistakable. More like a jetliner at takeoff. Here in Panama City Beach, we were near the center of the storm as it blasted away. We are now approaching the worst of Hurricane Michael. The Palm Beach city manager here tells us that he thinks about 50% of residents have left town. At this point, they are no longer responding to emergency calls, and if someone has a life-threatening emergency, they likely will not be able to get there. When Michael made landfall, its winds topped out at 155 miles an hour. That is just 2 miles an hour short of Category 5. Gusts may have clocked in higher. Many wind gauges broke. This is what it sounds like right up against pretty much all windows as the storm just tries to push through as best it can. It was enough to rip rooftops off buildings. So right now we're inside the hotel with flashlights, pretty much hunkered down during the worst of the storm to try to get back outside whenever it's safe to assess the damage. Just a few miles to the east of Panama City Beach lies the tourist town of Mexico Beach, which took a direct hit. Michael appeared to flatten everything in its path. Storm surges up to 8 feet and rainfall topping 5 inches submerged many houses there. Other buildings lay in piles. Michael is the lowest pressure hurricane to strike the U.S. mainland since 1969. Nothing this ferocious has ever hit the Panhandle. All right, we want to begin to check in with our correspondents now spread across this region. Omar Villafranca is in Port St. Joe. That is just next to Mexico Beach, where landfall happened and where rescues have been taking place all day long. Omar, what's the latest there now?
Well, here in Port St. Joe, Jeff, the rain has stopped. That's the good news. We're still getting a little bit of wind in this area, and now people are starting to come out and assess the damage. And look, in this area here, this is floodwater that has basically come up in this area. There's a lot of debris like this spread all around this area. People are starting to try to pick it up because the cleanup is underway. Hurricane Michael slammed into Port St. Joe earlier this afternoon. Heavy rains and tree-snapping winds pummeled the Florida Panhandle.
Whoa!
Thousands of people rode out the storm at home despite being told to get out. Port St. Joe residents went into rescue mode after Michael's 12-foot storm surge trapped people in their homes. Volunteers in small boats and big trucks pushed through streets blocked by trees and submerged in several feet of water. Donna Haddock didn't have a way to check on her family, so she used our cell phone to tell her trapped nephew that help was on the way. Within minutes, a driver in a big pickup truck pulled up to the waterlogged house and carried Jeff Pitts and his dog Buddy to higher ground. How was the water levels?
Got up to 4 feet in the house.
In the house?
In the house up to about my hip.
The driver was a man named Chris. He didn't have time to talk as he drove back to help more people, but his actions said plenty in this small community. Where would these people be without people with big trucks and boats?
Yeah, where's anybody without friends?
Even as the storm was passing overhead, volunteers came out with chainsaws, working to clear the streets of downed trees. In other parts of the city, hurricane-force winds damaged buildings and even flipped over this RV. As people assess the damage, Donna is just thankful she survived one of the biggest hurricanes to hit the Florida Panhandle. How was it to finally see him on the back of that truck?
Oh, that was good. We can rest easy now.
All right, Omar, you mentioned the cell service, by the way, Omar. We should mention it has been out for most people down here for a good 5 hours now, so that has been frustrating for folks who want to check in on loved ones to make sure they're okay. But Omar, talk a little bit more about those rescues, if you could, and what you've seen today.
Well, when we pulled up on this area, there was a little bit more water up here. Jeff Pitts, the gentleman we talked to, that's his house back there. You can see there's a red truck in the driveway. There's a tree that's toppled over on his house. He was telling us he had 4 feet of water inside, and a bunch of people who know friends and family who live over there, they were coming up to us. We just happened to have a cell phone that had one bar. That's how they were able to get a hold of Jeff. But let me show you some of the other damage that is going to become the long process. You can see over here, there's one of these big, tall, beautiful pine trees that are over here in the Florida Panhandle. Problem is, when a hurricane comes in, they snap and they're so tall, any power line that's around it, they're bringing down with it. And that is one of the big issues around here. A lot of people have chainsaws ready to go in this neighborhood just so they can start cutting it down. Hopefully the power companies will come back and try to get some sort of power up. But they understand, Jeff, it is going to be a long process for electricity and this cleanup.
Omar, a long process is absolutely right, but a very short road to development for Hurricane Michael. And I want to talk to Lonnie Quinn, Chief Weathercaster at WCBS now, more about that. Lonnie, I know you've all been amazed at the development of the Hurricane Michael and what's happened here. I mean, how does something go from a tropical storm to a nearly Category 5 in the span of 72 hours?
You betcha. I mean, it just bumped up so quickly. All the elements were in place, okay, for this to get strong very quickly. But there were elements out there that could have, beaten it up a little bit. Did not happen. Now, here's your current situation out there. This is your landfall picture. So you can see how Mexico Beach took the worst of it. The eye wall going right over Mexico Beach, pushing that storm surge onshore, Panama Beach, over to Laguna Beach. The other side of the eye wall, very strong, but pushing the water out, away from the shoreline. If you take a look at what we are dealing with as of right now, okay, you've got a storm that's into Georgia. Everybody asks the same question that Jeff Glor is asking. How? How did this happen? What elements came together? Well, here's the deal. You had warm water, nothing but fuel in front of this system for it to feed on. But we thought it would maybe pull in a little bit of dry air. It never mixed in that way. That did not happen. You had rapid intensification, and it never interacted at any point in time with the shoreline of the west coast of Florida or the north portion of the Panhandle. It just didn't happen. So you ended up with nearly a Cat 5 landfall, the strongest storm in that area, about the third strongest storm that the U.S. has ever had as far as a mainland landfall. This is a picture I was talking about in Mexico Beach. This is the worst I have seen so far. Those are tops of houses out there. I think that's about the worst storm surge we have seen. And look at all the destruction. We'll be seeing more pictures like this when we get some daylight on it tomorrow, but it should be pushing up towards the northeast, exiting somewhere around the Chesapeake. Jeff, let's go back to you.
Hey, Lonnie, can you just talk about that quickly? I mean, where the storm goes next? Because, I mean, I know the worst was here, but now if it's going to pass through North Carolina, other spots that were already saturated before Hurricane Florence, I mean, that's a concern as well, right?
Look, everyone's talking about the exact same thing. And look at the forecasted rainfall totals. These are not enormous like what they picked up earlier, but do you realize some folks haven't even dried out yet in the Carolinas, and portions of the Carolinas could be seeing a 6-inch range. It'll get a little lower as you get towards the coastline, but that rainfall plume is going to push all the way up towards, even like New York City could be seeing a 1 to 3 inch range tomorrow, maybe 2 to 4. We have flash flood warnings in place for the city because of this storm. It's not coming to New York City, stays offshore, but a lot of rain associated with it. Jeff?
All right, Lonnie, thank you very much again. We're going to check in now with Nikki Batiste. She is in Bristol, Florida. It's about 60 miles inland, where a lot of people, hundreds of people, have been taken for shelter after having to evacuate the hurricane.
The surge is what scared me.
These life-threatening storm surges in Franklin County led Dan Haggerty to seek shelter here 60 miles away.
If the surge hits as high as they think, 13 feet possibly, what would that do to your house?
I'd probably be halfway up the house, halfway up the first floor.
His home is just a block from the Apalachicola Bay, the same area our CBS News team reported from this morning. The message here is clear: get out now or risk your life. We soon evacuated the area too. We just had to leave Apalachicola because the storm is coming in fast and furious. We are driving about an hour away from here to find some shelter so we can stay safe as this hurricane hits land. We watched the hurricane hit from these windows. It was too dangerous to step outside. Our team sought safety with more than 200 Floridians at this school inland.
And when they said it was a Category 3 becoming a 4, I said, let's go.
Perla Olvera says a tree fell on her mobile home and the power went out. The thought still scares her 4-year-old daughter, Danny.
I was just crying.
You're here, your family's safe. What do you stand to lose back home?
Nothing, just material things that can be replaced.
Down the street from our shelter are these downed trees and power lines. This is going to make it much more difficult for people to get home and to see if their houses are still standing. Jeff?
Nikki, thanks very much. A tense, frightening afternoon for so many people here in Florida, even more so tonight because cell service in so many cases is not coming in. We have now learned that President Trump says he's going to be visiting this area on either Sunday or Monday. Jeff Pegues has been watching the federal response all day at FEMA headquarters.
At FEMA headquarters, a few hundred people are already coordinating the response to this devastating hurricane. What are you seeing that concerns you the most?
Well, it's doing exactly what the forecasters were pushing forward. I mean, storm surge, you're seeing the ocean rise.
FEMA Administrator Brock Long says the images suggest months or years of recovery for the hardest hit areas.
Power is going to be out for weeks, and infrastructure is going to be heavily damaged. It takes a long time to put this back together.
We caught up to Long after he briefed the president at the White House.
So they're reporting that this is one of the most powerful hurricanes ever to hit our country. Is that actually a fact?
Well, so in this area, this would be the most intense hurricane that struck this area since 1851.
FEMA has about 3,000 employees in the field, plus aircraft and search and rescue teams ready to move into both Florida and Georgia. But with more than 60 severe storms and hurricanes over the last 2 years, FEMA is under considerable pressure.
Is FEMA stretched thin?
Yes, you start to reach a point where the internal capabilities to manage not only the day-to-day mission of what we do, but also the sheer number of disasters, and not just the sheer number of disasters, but how intense these disasters have been over the last year and a half.
And that is magnified 5 months into the hurricane season. There's a lot of top jobs here at FEMA that have yet to be filled. Today in a briefing, Administrator Long expressed his frustration that his deputy had yet to be confirmed, even though he was nominated this past summer. Jeff.
Jeff Pegues, thank you very much. We are going to have much more from the hurricane zone coming up in the broadcast. Also coming up here tonight, there's been an arrest made in a plot to blow up a bomb in D.C. on Election Day. We're back right after this. A 56-year-old man from New York was charged today with making a huge bomb as part of a plot to blow himself up in Washington, D.C. on Election Day. Paula Reed fills us in on this.
FBI agents today continued searching a home just north of New York City, where yesterday they discovered a 200-pound bomb. Prosecutors say Paul Rosenfeld planned to detonate that bomb in Washington, D.C. on Election Day. He allegedly wanted to kill himself and draw attention to his political beliefs. Over the past 2 months, according to court papers, Rosenfeld allegedly sent letters and text messages to a Pennsylvania resident detailing his plan to detonate the bomb on the National Mall to draw attention to the sortition political theory that advocates the random selection of government officials. The Pennsylvania resident alerted the FBI, and police pulled Rosenfeld over Tuesday. After waiving his Miranda rights, Rosenfeld admitted his plan. He told agents he ordered large quantities of black powder online, built small test explosives, and then used about 8 pounds to construct the 200-pound explosive device in a plywood box in his basement. He said he installed certain components in the device to ensure that he was killed in the blast. FBI technicians removed the bomb from his basement and transferred it to a safe location. At a Senate hearing this morning, FBI Director Christopher Wray said his agents are investigating about 1,000 homegrown terror threats in all 50 states.
Now, those cover the waterfront of the full range of extremist ideologies from right to left and everything in between.
Rosenfeld made his first court appearance in federal court in New York earlier today. The FBI says it does not believe he's part of any larger terrorist organization. If he's convicted, he faces up to 20 years in prison. Jeff?
All right, Paula, thank you very much. Coming up here on the CBS Evening News, a new video of the hit squad that was allegedly sent to kill a Washington Post contributor. The operator of the limousine company involved in last weekend's deadly crash in upstate New York was arrested today and charged with criminally negligent homicide. 20 people were killed, including the driver, who did not have the proper license to operate that limo. The driver's widow talked to CBS News.
Did he ever complain about the vehicles?
Yeah, he did.
What did he say?
He did complain. He, you know, there were a few times where he told me, I overheard him say, I'm not going to drive this like this. You need to give me another car.
Federal documents show the limo failed an inspection last month and was not properly registered. There was a major sell-off on Wall Street today. The Dow fell more than 800 points, or about 3%. That is the worst one-day drop for the Dow in 8 months. Investors are worried about the economic fallout from rising interest rates and trade tension with China. Coming up next year, more from the hurricane zone. We are back now from Panama City Beach, Florida, and many who chose to ride out the hurricane here will be spending the night in the dark. At this point, it's estimated about 300,000 homes and businesses lost electricity. At the height of it, one resident said, "We are catching some hell." The damage here in some spots said to be catastrophic. Michael's winds are down to 115 miles an hour, but still severe, expected to maintain hurricane strength through at least tonight. Flash flood watches up in Alabama and Georgia as well. The one piece of good news we've seen The sun finally starting to poke through in one spot behind us tonight. We'll keep watching on CBSN, on CBS This Morning tomorrow, and tomorrow night on the CBS Evening News. Good night from Florida.